All right, for more on the debate, we're joined by Professor John Stremlau from the Wits International Relations Department. Good evening, Professor. Thank you very much for your time. So, as expected, the debate has dominated news headlines today, some calling Trump a liar after fact-checking websites verified some of his statements, while others voice concerns around President Biden's age and fitness to hold office. Your views on the debate?
Well, my views on the debate have been covered by your your correspondent in Washington. And I would like to take for a moment a South African perspective on this, because I gather that governments around the world are taking stock of the debate, but also taking stock of what a Trump administration might mean for U.S. foreign policy.
Yes.
The U.S. was very erratic and is not at all reliable under Donald Trump, whereas Joe Biden was trying to put together alliances, recognizing that the U.S. is not the sole superpower that it claimed to be at one stage in the aftermath of the Cold War. And he has been attentive to the interests and desires, such as Cyril Ramaphosa's visit to the White House, which was very convivial, but also was able to clear and clarify what the U.S. would do or not do. With Trump, you've got an American-first, isolationist, transactional. He wants to put on tariffs, and he doesn't talk about the cost of that to the consumer or what it might do to the economy, but he wants tariffs across the board. He's got very simple, emotional answers to every complex question, a little bit like Jacob Zuma. They're both traditionalists, but Ramaphosa and Biden are reformers, and reform is a hard business to process. Mm-hmm. I listened to talk about the forming of the cabinet, and we can't really rely on any of these principles saying what they really are negotiating, because they're negotiating. And in a democracy, you ought to be open but there are limits to how far you can go. And I just don't think that Biden reassured anyone that he was capable of carrying forward what he's been a really good president on. And there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to step aside.
Mm-hmm. Professor, you know, when listening to Donald Trump, this protectionism that we're seeing, I mean, it's even happening in Europe, it seems to be something that is gaining momentum. A number of citizens in America, just listening to him earlier today, he was stating that a number of Americans right now are struggling. America itself is not respected anymore because, if anything, they keep giving and then they're getting nothing in return. Wouldn't you say that this resonates with some of the Americans there? Because if you're talking protectionists or protectionism, it seems that it's taking off currently.
Look at Donald Trump has never won a majority rule of a majority vote. He's won in the Electoral College, and while the overall polling suggests a very close race nationally, in the 8 swing states under this crazy Electoral College system that prevails in the U.S. democracy, inherited from the founders back in the 17th century, 18th century. Nevertheless, he's leading 4, 5, 6 points in those key swing states. So he could again win an Electoral College majority. But what does the rest of the world make of this victory? Because he has such glib and thoughtless answers to, you know, I would not have allowed Russia to intervene in Ukraine, or it didn't down, but I could solve that in a day. He doesn't say how. He could solve
yes.
Gaza in a day.
He said it would have never happened. He says that Russia would have never invaded the Ukraine if he was president, and he said the same thing about Israel, that it wouldn't have happened? One assumes that he would be more diplomatic, perhaps that's what he means? Or maybe that what happened in Afghanistan led, at least he said that what what happened in Afghanistan probably emboldened people like Vladimir Putin to invade Ukraine.
Well, look at the Russians invaded Afghanistan and then pulled out. But the designs that Putin has on expanding the empire again of the former Soviet Union's empire is clear, and he's exercised it in Ukraine, but he's mobilized all of the Europeans against him, including those that were in the former Soviet Union, because they want their self-determination. So, you know, you've got these round and round, very complex problems that Biden has learned a lot about, but Trump is so self-centered and so glib that he just lies through, you know, repeatedly, but he does impress the rural Americans who are disgruntled by the fact that America is becoming more like South Africa. Immigration is a really hot button issue, and it's very complex, I know, and it is here. But, you know, is America going to belong to all who live it, united in its diversity, or is it not? And the MAGA crowd is a racist crowd, in my view, and so is Trump, and he's playing into that, and he can control the court, which is politicized, and it just had rulings today that again suggest that the U.S. is slipping backwards. Well, if I'm in Endurco or I'm in Europe and I'm thinking, my God, what kind of unpredictability, unreliability is the U.S., which is so transactional under Trump? It was a mess in the 16 aftermath of the 16 election against Hillary Clinton. She would have been a great president, in my view, but people did rally around Trump.
But what I'm getting from you is that a Biden win would be far better for South Africa currently. But reports have revealed, pardon me there, but reports have revealed that Democrats are worried and even talking about replacing Biden. But then we also know that the Democratic Party rules make it almost impossible to replace nominees without their consent. Just talk us through the process, if ever indeed they were entertaining the thought of possibly replacing him.
Well, it's never happened before, but then again, you didn't have a pre-convention discussion by two guys who had the presidency, the incumbent and the former president, and so this is breaking a lot of eggs. But the hope is that when the U.S. can settle down and be not so polarized. And I think that's going to require the dissolution of the Republican Party, but only if the Democrats win and they win big and like Franklin Roosevelt did. And that's not on the horizon right now, so long as Biden is. In the debate just sent chills down. You know, I was listening to a French commentator today, and he said, "What can we make of the United States these days? It's just a mess," and it is.
I want us to touch or discuss the views on immigration, because you'd already touched on it. Donald Trump has accused Biden of allowing millions of unauthorized migrants to enter the country and went on to say that migrants are actually the ones committing most of the crime in the country. What did you make of just their back and forth on immigration?
Well, I didn't think it was very illuminating, although Biden clearly has a dilemma here, because the immigration has increased under his illegal immigration has increased under his watch, and he's tried to curtail that. But at the same time, he wants to give those who are in the country and working hard a gateway to citizenship. And you know, in many ways, the dilemmas are similar to what we have in South Africa, with everyone wanting to move down to South Africa, getting a job and prospering. But the regulations, you know, how much services can one give to a non-citizen? We are still in a world of nation states, and sovereignty is the ability to control what goes on in your borders, and that is we'd like to get to a world community that is united in its diversity, but it's not there yet. It's not going to be in my lifetime, and so you do have to have immigration policies. But the balance that Biden was trying to admit, that Trump never built a wall. He talked about this thing in a zero-sum operation, and he used the COVID crisis to sort of keep people out, and that's not fair, and it's not right, it's not just, and but I don't have an easy answer for the immigration problem, and neither does Joe Biden. But at least he's working on something that might satisfy the various constituencies, and Trump doesn't. He doesn't have to worry about that. He just carries about himself.
Professor, just
the similarities.
Just in closing, Professor, in the interest of time, I just want us to close off with just your views around taxes, because when it comes to taxes, it's a conversation and debate even we have here in South Africa. When listening to Donald Trump, he's still of the view that if he were to win, he will go on to cut the taxes even further. And he justified his posture around taxes because he said even under COVID, he cut the taxes and really he felt it stimulated the economy. Whereas when listening to President Joe Biden, he said you can't continue to cut taxes of the top earners and corporates. It just doesn't make sense because you need to tax them a bit more so that you can have a number of the social services being funded by these people. Your views on just that whole debate of maybe you do need to cut taxes to stimulate the economy, because America did well under COVID, relatively so though.
Well, look, the COVID and economic recovery that Joe Biden has engineered was to the credit of this administration. I'm no doubt about that. However, what Trump did was, and it's paradoxical, what Trump did was to cut the taxes for rich corporations and rich individuals. Biden is trying to get at those who make more than $400,000 a year and are not paying their fair share in a contribution to the fiscus and then to the social services, which are desperately needed by the less fortunate. And so it's an endless debate, and it's a complex debate because getting tax reform is not easy. But at least Joe Biden was trying to reform the tax system, and Donald Trump is a traditionalist who just appeals to the emotions of those who feel they're being left behind. That is the white males, rural areas in the country which have the electoral college votes, and it seems to work for him. And he can still cut the taxes for the rich, and he's going to do it again. So he's telling us. So it's his idea about growth. It's like the tariffs against China. He's going to tariff everything, and then pass that cost on to the consumers, and then you'll get inflation. So he doesn't know very much, but he conducts himself in a television manner that seems to work for some voters. But I hope that not for all voters, but we may see a replacement of Joe Biden if that was.
All right, Professor, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you very much. That was Wits International Relations Department's Professor John Stremlau giving us analysis on the first TV US presidential debate that we saw earlier this morning.